A few years ago, I was in a lot of credit card debt, and we had different expenses that came up. We had children, we had medical expenses, and the debt just grew and grew. But to be honest, it also grew because my spending was not under control. And I had zero plan of how to get it under control and how to actually take charge of my money. So that's when I started looking into finance, personal finance, debt management, all the things, and started reading all the books to figure out how to get myself out of the pickle I got myself into. And I'm going to share with you the things that I learned and that I use that helped me along the way. And I think they'll help you too if you have that same situation where you're looking at your credit card debt and thinking, oof. So follow along and hopefully this stuff will help you out. The first thing I did was address my spending. And that was really hard because I liked spending money, especially at Target and Lowe's. We had a relatively new house, we had small children. There were so many things that I wanted. I wanted a play set, I wanted to repaint a room, wanted to add crown molding. The list just never stopped. And when I realized how much money I was spending between those two stores, I realized I could actually cut back my budget very quickly by simply staying out of those two stores. I started thinking of it like this. I could pay off my debt. I could pay all my minimum payments, but if I continue to add to that, then I'm just treading water. I'm not really making any progress. That's why it was really important for me to address my spending habits. And the way I did this was I kept a little notebook with me and a pen. I wrote down all the things that I spent money on. And then I realized that sometimes I was spending money for different reasons. So I might have been upset, I might have been happy, I might have been sad, I might have been having a great day. It was basically an emotional driven purchase. I had a lot of those. Once I started addressing the emotion behind the purchase, then I was also able to address what was driving that. And that was really important for me because I was an emotional spender. So to stop adding to the spending, the first thing I had to address is looking at where I was spending my money. And that meant that I had to get all those credit card statements and go through them line by line by line to see where I was spending my money at. Because I was using credit cards, it was really, really easy for me to forget that I had bought the things. There were things that I bought that I never actually opened up. I know, how crazy. It was important for me to address where I was spending the money at. And the only way I could figure that out, besides keeping a notebook and pen, was to go back through my credit card statements and my bank statements to see where all the money had gone. And this was a little depressing and eye-opening, to be honest. So the first thing that I did was audit where my spending habits were. I went through all the credit card statements, all the bank statements, and I listed every store that I spent money in and how much money I spent in them over the course of about a 3-month time period. Was this tedious and annoying and really hard to do mentally and emotionally? Yeah, it was, because it was very eye-opening to where I was wasting a lot of money at. The next thing I did is I went in and I removed my credit cards from anything that was an easy purchase, like any of the online stores that are easy purchases because your credit card is already loaded. I took that out of the framework to just put another barrier between me and making an impulse buy. Now, I don't have a credit card on my phone. I don't have that associated with my phone, but if I did, it would be a really smart move for me to remove it because, again, impulse control was something I wasn't really good at when it came to spending. Then the next thing I did was I created a rule for myself for spending. I didn't want to be without a credit card with me. Some people suggest that you leave the credit cards at home and you don't bring them with you. Well, that might work if you don't have 2 small children underfoot and you have cash on hand, but I didn't have that advantage. So the credit cards did come along because you never knew what was going to happen. It was important for me to have that backup for my own personal peace of mind. But I did put in place a rule for myself for spending, and that rule was simple. If I thought, oh my gosh, I have to have it, I really, really want it, I set it aside. And if I remembered in a week that I wanted the thing, then I could go back and buy the thing. Most of the time I forgot about it by the time I even got to the cash registers at the store. That was one way for me to eliminate that impulse purchase and to do a better job of controlling that impulse was, okay, if you still remember that you want this thing in a week, then you should purchase it. And I'm not talking about big purchases. I love stuffed animals. So we're not talking about big purchases, but little purchases like this or coffee or artwork do add up over time. So it was important for me to address those and make sure that I wasn't making those small impulse buys, because it wasn't that much. It was under $20. It had a coupon, and all those things were quickly draining my budget because it wasn't just one thing, it was multiples. It might be a coffee, and then a couple things because I deserve them, a couple things for the kids because I wanted to get them nice things, a couple things for my husband. And by the time we're done, the bill is now 4 to 5 times more than it would have been if I would have just gone in and got the thing that I was going to the store for in the first place, which I 9 times out of 10 forgot to get at all. So paying off the credit card while I was still adding to the credit card just didn't make any mathematical sense. Like I said, it was like treading water. I was just barely keeping my head above water. And when I stopped doing that, stopped adding to the debt, then I could start addressing the debt that I had. Credit card debt is a trap. You might not realize it because there's all these offers. You get cash back, that sounds great. You get miles, that sounds amazing. You get all of these benefits with a credit card, or benefits, we're going to say. The problem with a credit card is the only reason you're getting those benefits is, one, the vendor that you're buying the things from is the person who's actually paying for those benefits. You are paying for those benefits. You might not realize it because the vendor raises their prices so they can cover the cost of those benefits that they are paying for that you're getting with the credit card. So you're just paying for them yourself. You are just giving everybody a little slice of the pie before you're paying for benefits that you might not even be using. Those benefits also immediately cancel themselves out as far as if it's a benefit or not financially if you don't have your credit card paid off in time. Because if you don't have your credit card paid off in time, now you're paying interest on your credit card. And it's costing you more and more money, and soon it's going to cost you as much as whatever the benefit is that you would have with the card. So I want to explain the math to you, but to do that, we're going to have to move over to the whiteboard. So come along with me. One of the things that credit cards don't want you to know is how much it actually costs you to have a credit card. And I'm going to show you the math behind this. So let's just say we have $5,000 because it's a nice round number. Now, most people have more than $5,000 in debt, but if we have $5,000, the average debt is about $6,700. And then the overall average is about $22,000. So let's say you have $5,000 worth of credit card debt, and that's sitting at 20%. Now, if you don't get this paid off within the grace period that the credit card gives you, which is usually about 28 days, if you don't have this paid off, now this debt starts costing you money. It doesn't cost you 20% every day, it costs you 20% over the course of a year. So how much is that on a daily basis? Well, it's pretty easy to do, is you just take 20 and you divide it by 365. Or how much does it cost you per day? I'm gonna use the handy dandy calculator here so you can see. So if we have 20%, that's 0.2 is 20. We divide by 365. And now we have this 305479. So this is equal to, and this is the percent that you're being charged every day on the credit card debt that you have. So if you have $5,000 worth of debt, I'm gonna clean this up a little bit. If you have $5,000 worth of debt and you don't have it paid off within the grace period, then every day that money is costing you the money times this right here, which is your percentage rate. This comes out to right about $2.73 a day. So every day that you carry a balance on your credit card, if you have $5,000 in the credit card and it's at 20%, every day is costing you $2.73. That means every day you're paying about $3 to the credit card company for having a balance on the credit card. Over the course of a month, that's going to be equal to $83. Now, here's the kicker. Here's what credit cards don't want you to kind of put the beat on. So if we have $5,000 on our credit card, so we have $5,000, and we have to pay between 1 to 3% is the minimum balance. Let's say they charge us, let's say it's at 2% for this one. So we have 2%. That means they're only going to charge a minimum payment of $100. Oh my gosh, it's so great. So our minimum payment is $100. So you're like, well, that's not too bad. That's only $100 a month. But here's the kicker. Your minimum payment is $100 a month. Of your minimum payment, $83 goes directly to the credit card company. That's their money now. It does not go to your balance. It does not affect this, does not decrease that. In fact, only if we take 100 from 83, we get 17. Only $17 goes to reducing this. So if you only pay the minimum payments, you are literally paying just pennies towards the actual principal. And that's why if you're making minimum payments, it feels like you're not getting anywhere. It's because you're not. So if you don't want to spend almost 2 decades to get a debt paid off, then you have to change how you're paying that debt off. And there are a couple of different tools that you can use to get your debt paid off faster. And I'm going to cover those really quick. And then I'm going to explain them in more detail. The first tool that you can use is called the avalanche method. The second tool is called the snowball method. You can mix these two together if you want, or you can use them separately. It really depends on how your brain thinks. For example, for me, I need a quick win. If I don't have a quick win, I'm just going to get bored and not want to do it. So I needed quick wins. So with the snowball method, the idea is that you take out the smallest debts first. So you go in, and if there's a $300 debt and a $2,000 debt and a $5,000 debt, you're going to eliminate the $300 debt first. Now with the avalanche method, you don't care how much the debt is. You're looking at what are the percentage rates. So you're looking at how much money am I paying for this debt, and you're going with the highest percentage rate first on getting it paid off. So sometimes you need to get those quick wins and to gain that momentum to get the job done and get your debt paid off. Well, let me explain to you exactly how these work and how you can make them work for you and how I made them work for myself. So this is the Freedom from Debt calculator. And we're going to take a look at it. So you can put in what your debt is. This form right here is the playground for the avalanche method. I created pages that have playgrounds on them, so you could just play around with the numbers, get an idea of how all this works, and then you start entering your own information. Let's say, for example, we owe $2,300. And you can see it makes all the adjustments to that. Now for this, we have to change our minimum payment amount in this first one. So let's say our minimum payment's $150. Then all we would need to do is just grab that little corner and drag it down, and it'll make all the modifications for us. You can even go in and change the percentage rate, because one of the other ways that you can save money is to ask for a reduced interest rate on your credit card. Another way you can save money is asking the credit card for a promotional rate. Now, what happens with credit cards is they do have promotions that run. They run in different time frames, so there's no guarantee on how long it will be or what the rate will be. But think about it like this. If you have a credit card and it's sitting at 28%, and you go online, it takes just a few seconds, go through your portal, you could possibly get it for 9.9%. It might only be for 6 months, but that's still money that you would be saving, because obviously that's a lot less than 28%. The other thing that you can look at is asking the chatbot if there's any promotional offers. That way you don't have to talk to a human, but you might still be able to get a promotional rate. Back to this. So we have a promotional rate entered here, and then we can just do the math out by just clicking on it. Over here, it tells us what the cost is for the interest rate. So we can see we're staying at this, we're paying $51.62 a month an interest rate on this loan, because it's saying it's such a high interest rate. And this repeats across the way. You just do it for each of your debts. It has what the debt is, how much the minimum payment is, what the interest rate is, and what it's costing you. So you can see how much it's costing you. And I found this to be helpful for me to not spend money, because I knew how much these things were costing me on a monthly basis. Now the other method is called the snowball method. And the snowball method is where you put your lowest amount that you owe in first, and then you move on over to the highest amount that you owe. And you pay from lowest to highest. So the money that you pay here, once you're done paying here, gets moved over to here and gets paid. You can see right here that this has jumped up to $400. Because we had $350 here that we're not paying anymore, so now we can pay $350 to our second debt, and so on. So you can get your debt paid off faster. If you would like to get this to figure out how to get out of debt, then you can go to the link in my bio or the first pinned comment to get access to the debt freedom calculator. When you're paying off debt, it really is about picking your battles and figuring out which battles are the most important to do first. In my experience, the most important battle for me to do was to understand how I was spending my money and to modify that, to do a better job of not spending the money. The second biggest battle was stocking up that emergency fund so I had money available to me for when things went wrong, like the AC going out in the middle of the summertime. Then the third most important thing was getting rid of the debt. Now for me, I had to do the snowball method because I needed that win. I needed those quick wins. And then I could move into the avalanche method and get the debt paid off without paying a lot on interest rate. If you're looking at having more of your money every month, the best way to do that is to get rid of your credit card debt as fast as you can. And you do that by addressing how you're spending, living within your means, selling off things that you don't need anymore, that you don't want, and putting that money towards your credit card debt, saving up in an emergency fund, and getting your debt paid off by using the snowball or the avalanche method so that you can become debt free and have more of your money available for you to do what you want with it rather than giving it over to a credit card company.